We are committed to divesting from war profiteers, from the Israeli and Zionist entity, and from all companies and organizations that profit off of the bloodshed of our people and of all people. So on this same line of thought, we are now going to have a Divestment 101 to talk a bit about the strategies and the ways that the UC pools its money and how we can get that divestment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabriel. I'm a grad student in the physics department and a member of my union, UAW 4811, and of the Palestine Solidarity Working Group, which is a group within that union. So I've got some slightly scattered notes, but I'm happy because I think what I want to talk about is going to dovetail really nicely with what we just heard. Overall, I think, the point that I want to make today is that, we as a movement should have an accurate understanding of, what the university is and what it does and how it works. And I think the key concept that ties a lot of the different things we've talked about today, that's the concept of financialization. So I'll start just by saying quickly a rough definition of it. Financialization is a pretty broad concept, and it refers to the historical process via which, when producing regular commodities like rice and socks becomes insufficiently profitable, large corporations and banks then turn towards investing in the speculative economy, in financial assets, which is basically like, the fake economy of like stocks and option and futures and all that stuff. But financialization also more specifically refers to the way that universities and other public institutions have started to operate more and more like companies and banks do. At the same time that companies themselves started to turn towards forms of speculative investment. So that all maybe sounds a little bit abstract right now, but I'll start by I'll pick up on something that the previous speaker was talking about, which is the free speech movement in the 60s. You remember how the thing that sparked it was that the university banned student organizers from tabling on Sproul, and the thing they were tabling about was this loyalty pledge, right? This pledge to the United States and to not be a communist, not support, Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. What you'll notice is that in that struggle, and at other universities, very similar things were happening. In general, students were mobilizing against the draft. They were trying to prevent people from getting drafted into the US military to go and slaughter Vietnamese people. But what you'll notice is that divestment was not a word uttered at that time, right? That was not part of the lexicon during that movement. It was not a strategy or a tactic in that movement. But now, fast forward to the 1980s, where we had another major student struggle, that of the struggle against apartheid South Africa. And at this time, students across the country launched this wave of campaigns, and now the goal explicitly is divestment. They explicitly use the word divestment. Specifically, they want the universities to divest from South Africa and businesses, that is, bonds issued by that South African government, and also companies doing business in South Africa. So then my question to the crowd now is, what happened in between those two struggles? I mean, they're both, they both have a flavor of, internationalism, a flavor of being anti-war, a flavor of anti-imperialism, but why does the concept of divestment emerge between those two times, say the 60s and the 80s? I will hear anything the floor has to offer. Financialization, yeah. Wow, crazy. So, yeah, I mean, that seems to be, to me at least, it seems to be the key, because prior to the 1980s, what is a university endowment? Prior to the 80s, an endowment really was just a rainy day fund. Like, it was just like a piggy bank, a pot of money that the university would fill up by asking for donations from rich people. And then whenever the university had to spend a bunch of money, like say there was some, some flood or like a building needed to get renovated, the university would dip into that piggy bank and use the money to like, maintain its operations, to reproduce itself. But then the piggy bank doesn't really grow. I mean, you want it to be like reasonably big, but the point is not for it to grow. It's just to be big enough and stay roughly constant such that when a rainy day comes, you have enough to cover it. This is no longer the case, right? That's not how university endowments grow today. In fact, I mean, the university's wealth doesn't come only from its endowment, but it's a very significant portion. And between 2023 and 2024, the university's wealth grew by $10 billion, with a B, $10 billion. And between 2024 and now 2025, roughly the same, also another $10 billion, right? This is like, this seems very natural to us now in a way, but like there used to be a time where like, why the fuck does a university need to grow its wealth by $10 billion in a year? And if you ask like, okay, why, if you notice that it grew its wealth by that much, the natural thing to ask is, okay, what's it gonna do with it? And the answer today is nothing. It's gonna keep investing it because that's the point. That's what a bank does, it's what a corporation does. Its operations only serve the purpose of taking X money and turning it into 1.1 money, right? That's all it is. And that's the sense in which universities today are really just banks. Like they have these operations that they are supposed to do, in the same way that, any corporation has like its niche, its market or whatever, but in the case of the university, it's teaching students. But the point of it is not to teach students. The point of it is to use the fact that you teach students and that you can increase your class sizes year over year. You can buy more buildings or expand the buildings that you have. You can buy more land. You can expand your research operations so that you can convince your investors, hey, if you give me X money, next year I will return to you 1.1 money. And that's what a university does today. So yeah, this, just to get back to my point, it's only after financialization took off in the 70s and 80s that divestment became like a relevant thing to say at all. Because prior to that, it's like you wouldn't ask the university to divest because they didn't invest in the first place. It's like, no one thought of it because it just wasn't relevant. But then, after financialization starts to take off, then it becomes a relevant tactic. Then students can say, hey, you are investing all this wealth in, a state that brutally represses black people. We want you to take that money out of there. So that's the context in which divestment as a tactic was first battle tested, and it was severely repressed. I mean, sometimes we don't really remember, but the types of repression and investigation that we've seen against Palestine organizers now, we saw a lot of that in the 80s. The NSA, the FBI, all the three-letter agencies, they had explicit programs of we need to surveil every Arab and Muslim and pro-Palestine student across the country. Like that was like their literal policy, right? And this is also after the years of COINTELPRO, where they would literally hunt down, like literally murder black radicals and communists. So there was an intense amount of domestic repression going on. And nevertheless, we had a very successful movement here at UC Berkeley, and the University of California divested $3 billion from South Africa. So, we have, this isn't our first time, in the ring, so to speak, right? We've been through this shit before. So, yeah, let me now talk a little bit about the future. So, financialization is one, it's an organic component of imperialism, which is the process by which rich countries in the global north wage economic war against the global south and plunder their wealth and keep their workers' wages artificially low and deny them their sovereignty and keep them in a state of poverty and underdevelopment. So there's no question, I think, that the primary agents in the struggle against imperialism are obviously, manifestly, the poor and working masses in the global south who are fighting for sovereignty and dignity and to liberate their land from foreign capital. I think we need to start from that basic reality. Any political analysis that doesn't start from there, I think is just going to confuse things. But where does that leave us? And by us, I mean the workers and the students and the marginalized and oppressed and poor in the global north, within the imperial core. And I think, personally, an accurate way to understand where we stand in this imperialist world system is that in some ways our existence is governed by a contradiction, a really significant contradiction. We are simultaneously the beneficiaries of the drain of value from the global south, which is to say beneficiaries of imperialism, because I'm not afraid that tomorrow some foreign country is going to bomb my house or my school or my church or my hospital. I'm not afraid of that personally, which is not something that people in Iraq can say, let alone Palestine or Venezuela. But simultaneously, we're also exploited, right? We are exploited members of the working class who stand to benefit from overthrowing our ruling class in Wall Street and in Cupertino and Mountain View and Washington, D.C. So this is the sense in which I think we live in a contradictory site with respect to imperialism. And we simply have to recognize that financialization, which is to say imperialism, it manifestly does not work for, quote unquote work, for the hundreds of millions of people that the US and its allies have slaughtered over the past century, or the 2 billion people around the planet that today are hungry and malnourished and don't have regular access to clean water. I think we can understand that imperialism doesn't work for them. But we should also understand that it doesn't work for us either, right? All the contradictions aside, well, not aside, no, staying within that contradictory space, it is also true that our rent keeps going up, and that if I break a leg tomorrow and I have to go to the hospital, I might go into lifelong debt or something. That it is manifestly the case that the university is not here to serve us, right? It is here to accumulate money, and we are just subjects to that. So this is the sense in which divestment is not a charity operation. It is not to mistake who the primary agents in that struggle are. Of course, it's the Palestinian resistance and the steadfast Palestinian people. Of course it is. But it is also incumbent on us to lean on the side of this contradiction that would simultaneously benefit us and the liberation of the global south, and in particular the Palestinian people. So I think we have a choice, essentially. The balance is shifting. I mean, some people within the imperial core have always been excluded from the spoils of imperialism, in particular black people and other racialized groups. But I think, people are aware that this squeeze is coming for everyone, and that everyone's conditions in the global north are getting shittier and shittier. So essentially, we have a choice. We can either try to preserve imperialist global relations and try to subdue or exterminate, any progressive or insurgent force in the global south or the global north, which is fascism, or we can fight to overthrow the yoke of imperialism from all people, including everyone, which is anti-imperialism. That's the choice between us, fascism or anti-imperialism. And if I just, wait, can I take a couple more minutes? Okay. Wait, am I really over time? Fuck, okay. All right, super quick, okay. So I just want to, we can take courage in where we are and in the tradition of the Bay Area. And I'll give one example. I have 2 more pages, but yeah, I lost track of time a little bit, sorry. But okay, so in 2010, remember, the siege on Gaza started in 2008, right? Since 2007-ish. Since 2008, there have been multiple flotillas, international flotillas, trying to reach Gaza and introduce aid, because, again, the starvation and the siege did not start in 2023. In 2010, there was a really famous one because Israel murdered a bunch of the activists on this flotilla. There were about 100 activists, I think. All of them were kidnapped and interrogated, and 10 of them were murdered. In fact, maybe have people seen that famous clip of Hugo Chavez being it's in Spanish, of course, but it's damn you, state of Israel. From the bottom of my soul, damn you, state of Israel. It's a very funny clip, everyone should watch it. But if you haven't seen the way it starts, he's responding to this this massacre. And then in response, I mean, he's speaking to an audience of workers, and one of the workers starts to chant "Free Palestine," and he's like, "And long live the Palestinian people, a heroic people, a good people." Anyways, there's a strong tradition of Venezuelan Palestinian solidarity that people don't really talk about. But this massacre that took place, right? Then there's this Zionist think tank called the Reut Institute or something very forgettable, and they write this report in which they're trying to analyze what went wrong PR-wise. Why did Israel lose this PR battle? Why were we not able to mobilize our media apparatus to basically paint the picture in a way that benefited Israel? I mean, obviously it doesn't enter their minds that people in general just are against innocent people getting slaughtered. That doesn't occur to them because they're Zionists. But what they do say is that there are some key hotspots around the Western world, in Europe and the US, that are particularly dangerous to the Zionist movement. And they call out some major cities like Brussels and London and Paris. They call out the entire country of Ireland, which is cool, yay for Ireland. And then in the US, they specifically call out the Bay Area. They say the Bay Area is a hotbed of anti-Zionist organizing. Specifically, the biggest threat to them is delegitimizers, people who delegitimize, who do not accept that Israel has a right to exist. And they specifically call out the Bay Area, and they specifically call out students and workers, specifically. So they're afraid of us. They are afraid of us. So this is why we should be thankful, or we should be in solidarity with Peyrin. And yeah, thank you all for being here.